absent. Vice President Darrow.
Here.
President McClelland.
Here. Please stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tonight's meeting agenda, any additions or corrections?
There is an addendum agenda that's been requested for this evening for one additional personnel item and a request for an executive session for personnel matters.
With that addition, I ask for approval of tonight's agenda, or a motion, please. Mr. Darrow, Ms. Kalinowski, roll call, please.
Vice President Darrow.
Yes.
Ms. Kalinowski.
Yes.
Mr. Newmoff.
Yes.
President McClelland.
Yes. Discussion items, Mr. Sawyers.
Thank you, President McClellan. We'd like to begin this evening with the Rose Run project update. Adrian Jolly and Joe Stefanoff are here from the city of New Albany to share some additional information related to the Rose Run project that we previously presented on here at the Board of Education meetings, as well as our recent conversations related to the traffic impact of the Rose Run project beginning in October. So Adrian and Joe, welcome to the Board of Education meeting, and we're glad to have you here and look forward to the information that you will share this evening.
I'll get us started tonight. Thanks for having us again this evening. I think we were here last summer when this was still a concept, and fortunately for us, and I think for the community, our city council since that time has approved us to go into full construction drawings, which we have almost complete construction drawings at this point. We actually have hired a construction manager, that is Messer Construction, who has a local presence, and actually the president of Messer has a child in the school district right now. So they're very familiar with the campus and the district and some of the concerns and challenges that come with a district and a campus this large. We have two pretty important dates coming up for us as we advance the construction of this park. One being the 16th, this Thursday, the start of school. And so I wanted to take you through some things we've done around the Village Center and on the school campus in preparation for the start of school. And then also want to update you on some of the sequencing and phasing of construction and what we expect come beginning of October when the actual full construction will start to take place. Is that?
Down arrow should work.
Down? Okay, there we go. So this summer, we've been working with our construction manager and construction team to really understand the phasing of construction. And I must say our partners at the school district, Superintendent Sawyers and Treasurer Jenkins and Patrick, have been great partners with us to really understand what the needs of the school district are, and also to work with us to try to phase this construction in a way that minimizes the disruption on campus as much as possible. So some of the things that we've done this summer in preparation for the start of school on the 16th is at the request of Superintendent Sawyers, which really was strategic in thinking ahead. The road, Dublin Granville Road, will have to close for this park to be constructed beginning in October. And thinking ahead when the timing would be best to change the behavior of parents using this drop-off loop, we decided to institute those changes beginning the first day of school. So you may have seen on the McCoy Loop in the former middle school, high school drop-off loop, some signage and some barricades that went up last week. So we put barricades up at the entrance and exit to the former middle school, high school drop-off loop. You can see that in the middle. We actually, I don't know if you have a pointer, but
Just don't touch the screen, Adrian, it will move.
I won't do that. When this road is actually closed beginning in October, instead of exiting out the western exit of McCoy Loop, traffic will have to loop back through this drive aisle and then come back out Dublin Granville Road. And so what has been in place beginning of last week was a barricade was put here so that will prevent traffic from exiting from this loop. And then some signage has gone up. Today, or last night and today, some curbs were painted, a center line was painted, and you might have seen some cones correcting traffic. Starting Wednesday, there's going to be a product called Quick Curb installed. So those cones will indicate the place where that Quick Curb will be installed. Quick Curb is about a plastic curb that's about this high with bollards on top. And so it would be uncomfortable for someone to drive over it, but it really directs traffic in a way that will really direct traffic for teachers coming in here to park and separate that from vehicles that are going to exit out this way. And then we worked with the fire department to understand their needs in the drop-off loop. And so some Quick Curb will be along this portion to direct traffic to a single lane adjacent to the sidewalk. Some other things we've done in this general area. So this whole summer has been about preparation for the eventual closing of these roads and the construction of this park. We've studied, this is really a tricky little area in terms of traffic signals for us. This little knuckle in Main Street really has traffic backed up, mainly on the PM peak. So not as much at the end of school, but like that 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock range. We did a traffic study in this area. So some of the things we've done is we have, these 3 signals were not synced. And so we ran fiber and we synced these 3 signals up. And then we also changed the timing of the signal. So what you'll notice on AM and PM peak times, this is now a 95-second signal to get through these lights, and then they're all talking to one another. And then you might have noticed just at the end of last week, before, if you were traveling south on 605, you had a left turn lane and a through lane and a right only turn lane. So if you wanted to go straight and you were behind that one car that wanted to turn left, you could wait for an entire cycle sometimes because there's a lot of volume going through there before you would actually get the opportunity to go straight. We reversed those last week on the advice of our traffic engineer. So now you have a right and a through and then a left only. It's interesting, the volume of left isn't that much, but this will create some more certainty. So you know if you're in that right lane, once that signal changes, you're going to be able to go, whether it's right or through. These 2 changes, the signal timing and the striping switch, allows us to carry about 20% more volume through capacity through that intersection at peak times. So we've already noticed an improvement. The timing changed around the 4th of July. We've seen less backups on North High Street, except when something happens on 161, and that kind of throws all of the traffic in the village center awry. So I think those will be some improvements you will see or hopefully have seen in this area of the village center. We've also taken a look at several crosswalks in the vicinity of the Market Square area. Coming out of Keswick, turning left has always been difficult from a visibility standpoint. There's on-street parking there. So we took a look at that last year. Traffic engineers did a little study. They recommended that we take out some of that on-street parking to make it more visible and easy to turn left. I've done it recently myself. It's much easier now that we've taken out that on-street parking. We actually coned it off at the end of last year. But this summer we came in and curbed it and kind of extended the lawn area. So it just looks like a green area. So we've been taking a key look at different intersections around town, really trying to make sure that they're safe from a pedestrian standpoint. One of the things that is not complete yet, but I think will be complete soon, is we're going to introduce push button crosswalks at the Market Main roundabout. So those have had technology that was supposed to use sensors to acknowledge when someone was at the crosswalk, and then the lights would flash. That technology unfortunately never worked. So we're going to take that out, and we're going to actually put in just a bollard with a push button. So you've probably noticed those lights have either blinked continuously for several years or not at all, depending on what leg of the intersection you've been at. Now they're going to be activated by a push button. They'll be off until that push button is pressed, and then they will flash and stop traffic and allow pedestrians to cross. One thing I also always promote when I'm talking about the Market Main roundabout, it was built intentionally with 2 options for crossing. So there are crosswalks closer to the circle of the roundabout, but then as you get further out, so maybe closer to where Freshie is on the north leg, there are additional crosswalks. So although roundabouts have some advantages with crossings because speeds are slower and you're not crossing as much distance, we realize not everyone would choose to cross there. So there is a second layer of crossings built in. So this is what you'll see starting this week. You'll also see our electronic message boards out. So right now they're in a few different locations that just say school is starting August 16th, watch for pedestrian slow down. I think slow down is in cap letters. We put it on there as long as we can. We will change out those messages over these next 6 weeks. So we'll start advertising the park construction beginning October. And then as we get closer to the date of the actual road closures, we'll advertise those dates a couple weeks ahead. So people will not be surprised by it. And then as we get to the beginning of October, 2 different closures will happen in order to build this park. First, Dublin-Granville Road will close from Fodor and Market on the west to a point just west of the Cottage Salon business on the south side of Dublin-Granville. So access will be maintained to the salon and to the bungalow. And then access will be maintained to the eastern drive of the McCoy Loop. All that black dark line indicates construction fencing. So this entire area will be fenced off. That's an 8-foot tall construction fence. Messer has a lot of construction on OSU campus. They built all those north residential towers here recently and done some work on 15th and High. So they really know how to lock down and make safe a construction site, especially when you have children of different ages, but school children and a lot of activity in an area. So that will be closed off. You'll see construction gates at both Fodor and the eastern closure. And then Village Hall Road is going to also be closed off from a point just from the west of the entrance to the Heights Center to a point west of the Wide Road. We will maintain access on Village Hall Road into this parking lot. We also will keep this path and bridge open, fenced off so it's safe, but it will be open all throughout construction. I have talked to some parents in the district that use that, kind of drop their kids off on Village Hall and have them walk across. So we'll maintain that access and make it safe for children to cross and hopefully use that even more through this year if it's convenient for folks. Some other things that you will see, we'll continue to use electronic message boards to indicate changes in construction. From a construction standpoint, some of the first work that they're doing is undergrounding all of the overhead utilities that are now on the south side of Dublin-Granville Road. So you'll see a lot of just trenches, a lot of work is happening underground over this first phase of construction. A lot of work on the pedestrian bridge, so the foundations will be done sometime over the fall and winter. So they'll really be in this area, and that's why Village Hall Road is going to close. You also will see a lot of clearing going on within the creek area itself. If you go down there now, it's pretty choked. It's pretty thick with invasive species. And with the school children's help over the years, we've done a lot of work on getting out invasive species, but there's still a lot of work to do. So I actually met with Sandy Wilmore on Friday to talk to her and get some information out to the environmental science teachers about this project. I think it's a really great opportunity to get those invasives out in a meaningful way and hopefully stay on it and reclaim that space. Make sure that we're doing things responsibly from the environment standpoint, because there's been such an improvement to the quality of that stream over the years, and really put new plantings in that's going to enhance the stream quality for years to come. So that is our first phase of construction. That takes us through probably June 30th of next year. Then I anticipate I'll probably be back in here to tell you about the second phase of construction. Yes. So essentially what happens is it will flip, right? So the portion in green will open, and then we will close down the kind of eastern quarter of that road. And we'll have more details related to that timing as we get closer next summer. I think communication is very, very important with this project. Obviously, it's going to impact the entire community, and it's going to cause some disruption in the village center, especially during peak traffic times. So you probably got a mailer in your mailbox last week. It came from Superintendent Sawyers and Mr. Stefanoff, And really, we just want to get information out. We don't want when people drop their children off on Thursday, the first time that they hear about these changes or this project. And our goal is to be as transparent and open with this information as possible. Certainly, people are going to have complaints, and we understand that. But as long as we're being transparent and we're communicating what's happening. So this is our communication strategy. We have kind of some public relation pieces that we're doing. We have stakeholder communication. So we've met, obviously, with the school district several times. We've met with the fire district, the fire department, obviously our police department with our school resource officer and DARE officer are very involved. We have some general marketing that we're doing, and then some digital marketing. So we think we'll also use social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Nextdoor to really push out information in real time. And we've already started that and received some comments, so we're fielding those comments from folks. We've set up a phone number that will be live when construction starts in October. That will be a dedicated phone number just for questions about this project. It will be staffed, at least initially, full-time, really just to answer those questions. And then as that trickles down, it will probably just go to a voicemail. We also will set up an email address just for questions about this project. So really, that's the kind of nuts and bolts that's going on in these next 2 months. But I'm here to answer questions and really just want to answer anything. Certainly, you guys know more about what happens on these drop-off and pickup loops than we do. And every time I talk to someone about this, I learn something that we can usually incorporate. Actually, I drove down the road last week and Mike was out and he and I moved some barricades together.
Barricades.
Yeah, we wish we had a picture of that. So again, I think the important thing to know is we've done some things, we've put some measures in place, but we also know what we're going to have to adjust. So once this closure actually happens, traffic patterns are going to change, and we're going to monitor them, and we'll adjust accordingly to make sure whatever we can do, whether it's signal timing or prioritizing certain travel movements, we're going to be monitoring it. We're going to be listening to what people have to say, and we'll adjust as needed. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add.
Thank you. And thanks for giving us the opportunity to be here and present tonight. Just a couple of things to add. Each year, as you know, the police department has a beefed up presence around the campus. Our officers work there's a much higher presence. Traffic enforcement is emphasized to make sure that people are aware that the school zones are active and get people to slow down. That won't be any different this year. In fact, we'll continue to have a strong presence right around the perimeter of the campus, but also extending out to the south along 62. We recognize that there are some residents, particularly on the east side of the country club, who might have some reservations about crossing 62, whether it's at the roundabout or at the mid-block crossing just north or south of the roundabout. We will have, as they're available, assuming that there aren't other calls for service, we will have a cruiser parked somewhere along that 62 corridor between Village Hall Road and Market Street in order to slow traffic down and hopefully create a little bit more sense of comfort for the pedestrians. We would also encourage those pedestrians that aren't comfortable doing a crossing, making a crossing at the mid-block, to go down and utilize the traffic signal at Dublin Granville and 62. So we have different choices for people depending on their comfort level. In addition to that, we've contracted with New Albany Security to add 2 security officers to help with traffic control and traffic movement, both at the high school drop-off and at the McCoy drop-off. That will work. They'll be working with our school resource officer and DARE officer who will be on campus. It will give us the ability to have those folks move around and address the needs that arise. We will have the New Albany security folks there probably through November, and then we'll evaluate as we get closer to that November timeframe whether or not we need to continue to have them there through the winter months to deal with traffic related to snow or any other security issues. Thanks to Adrian's efforts working with the administration, we were able to make provisions for handicap access to the back of the school. And our goal is to try to make this as comfortable as people as possible. We understand it's going to be difficult. We understand that there will be some traffic tie-ups and delays, but we think if we can make it through this year or so of construction, that the end product is going to be very worthwhile. So if you have any questions, Adrian and I would be happy to answer those for you.
I would just like to publicly compliment Adrian and Joe and really everyone from the city that we've worked with over the course of really the last hardcore 6 months talking about this project and preparing for construction. The city's been tremendous with all the efforts that have been put in place in conversations with Splone, the responsiveness we've received from the city, all the planning that Joe and Adrian have done. It's been very, very good. I agree with you. We're going to encounter challenges. We are preparing the best we can, and parents and students need to just be prepared to allow for a few extra minutes. We do have an additional communication that's been drafted that's going out to our parents tomorrow that gives further detailed information related to the drop-offs, recommendations, policies or procedures associated for protocols for safety related to those drop-offs. Board members, you received that yesterday from me, so you saw the preview, but that's going out. And we are strongly encouraging any family that's eligible to ride the bus to please ride the school bus, given the imminent reality of what this construction project is going to have for drop-off and pickup on the school campus. But compliments to the city. You've been wonderful to work with in this process. You've done a lot of proactive things that are outside the scope of your responsibility because we're trying to benefit not only just the students, but the parents and everyone in the city of New Albany. So I commend you for everything that you've done. It has been tremendous to work with you.
Good.
So I just had a couple of clarifying questions. So the McCoy entrance and exit, you can go either way when you exit?
So that is a great point.
Patrick, will you bring up the other map of Loop B that zooms in?
I'm glad you asked that. This exhibit was done prior to an on-site meeting we had just last week, and we really looked at exiting. So what we realized is now if you exit from the western driveway, you can only turn right.
Right.
We looked at that and thought that we need to maintain that right only until the road closure in October, and then that will be a left only.
Okay.
So until October 1st, it will be right only, which is the same as it is now. It's just shifted down the street a little bit. October 1st, it will be a left only because the road will be closed to your right.
So this is the only area I think we're going to have a big transition, because we're going to be, forcing people to go toward the roundabout.
Which we currently on this past year, when you came out the previous exit at the middle school, it was a right turn only.
Right.
You were doing a right onto Dublin Granville Road towards Fodor. You will still be forced to do that until October 1st. And then the traffic pattern will change, as Adrian said, to a left turn only.
So as of October 1, there'll be probably a lot more traffic in the roundabout.
There will be more traffic, certainly. So we've run some traffic simulations to really try to understand how this is going to impact traffic in the village center. Now, the caveat is people don't always behave as a computer program says they're going to behave. So we have an idea of what this is going to do to traffic, but that's why we're going to be out there monitoring and adjusting. I think we will see more traffic and congestion in the roundabout. Our detour plan for this project is to take people, so north-south is our main volume. So most of our traffic comes from that north-south direction. Our detour route for this project will be from the south. If you're coming from the south, there will be a detour at 62 and Morris, take you down Morris and then north on Reynoldsburg New Albany Road. Also coming from the north, if you're on 62 or 605, that detour will be not to take you down 62, but to take you down RNA. Basically, our goal is to get through traffic onto Reynoldsburg New Albany Road to keep 62 available for local traffic. And we've run some simulations, what that does to the flow. And if we can get a good percentage, I think we were conservative, like 30% of people use those detours, that will significantly help the congestion at the roundabout. But that's the main message. If you're going through New Albany, take Reynoldsburg, New Albany Road and 605 and leave 62 available for local traffic.
One additional thing that may be helpful, this will really be dependent on the preferences of the parents as they're driving their children to school. But one thing they may want to consider is to drop their kids off in the parking area and the drop-off point that's closest to their home, as opposed to traveling across campus. So, for example, if you're coming from the north side of the community from the Fenway, or I'm sorry, the Links area, and you utilize that the elementary loop and have the kids cross campus with the additional security officers, we hope that there'll be a greater sense of ease. That would prevent the need to travel south on 605, travel either around Market Street to drop off at, say, the high school loop, or make the trip into McCoy loop and out again. By the same token, if you're coming from the southwest, to utilize the Fodor Road loop as opposed to trying to go north to the elementary loop. And then, of course, finally, the McCoy loop. So if we can do some of those things, and we hope that, as parents start to experience some of that congestion, if they're just focused on their traditional route, that after a couple of days, they'll make that adjustment and they'll look for other opportunities, especially, again, if they know that their children are safe as they're being dropped off and we have that additional uniform presence on campus. Well, additionally, as you're aware, we have the signal now at the Fodor entrance, so that should make traffic flow in and out of the high school lot a little bit easier. And for those students who cross and park over at the Church of the Resurrection.
On the high school drop-off loop.
Patrick, you go to C, please, or A. I think it's A. Go back up a slide. A, right there.
Does it make sense to encourage families who don't have high schoolers to use that loop, after 8 o'clock? Because I think a lot of people don't think about dropping kids and having them walk through, go up the hill from the high school. But,
right.
Usually it's dead after 8 o'clock in that loop. And if, as we were discussing, there's going to be more security presence, maybe we can encourage people to try to use, as you were saying, if that's closer to your home, just use the high school loop and it's safe, and kids have to walk a little bit on campus, but if they feel safe.
Yeah, what's the bell schedule at high school when, I know they start at 8.
Their day starts at 8 o'clock.
Right, but what time, when is there a change period?
48 minutes, and then a 4-minute passing. So it'll be 8:52. So it's about elementary arrival, but it still happens today because we have elementary students who walk from Hampstead that come in through the high school gates that walk up the promenade to the elementary school. So to Debbie's point, and really Joe's point, the communication that's going to families tomorrow really emphasizes the fact you have multiple drop-off loops. It's not just the one that you're typically used to that's adjacent to your student's building. We are a walking campus. You should pick the loop that's closest to your home and allow your student to traverse through the campus because we are a walking campus. With the additional security, we have staff protocols in place to try to have more people outside at specific points. We believe it is safe, and we want kids to be able to walk through the campus to try to help alleviate the traffic patterns that we anticipate will be challenging.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you both.
And we're here if you have any other questions in the future, feel free to give us a call.
And thank you for all the work Messer did today. They were wonderful on campus. So I know they're coming back tomorrow because I talked to them about the curb. So I'm excited that they're going to be in before school starts on Thursday.
So are we. Thank you. All right. Good luck with the first day.
Thanks so much.
Thank you both.
Back to school updates.
Next, we'd like to do the transportation update for 2018-19. Mrs. Jenkins and Mrs. Honecker are going to present that on behalf of the administration to the board. Ms. Jenkins, Ms. Honecker, I think Ms. Jenkins is first. You have the
evening.
presentation in your packet. No, actually you don't. You do not. Sorry, this one's not in your packet.
Good evening. So we're going to do a back-to-school update on transportation. I'm not going to go into detail and read these slides. You've seen them probably 2 or 3 times, the first few slides, basically saying that Ohio Revised Code 3327.01 dictates our transportation requirements. Basically, we are required to transport grades K through 8 if you live outside 2 miles. We are not required to transport grades 9 through 12. We are required to transport students with special needs if they require that as part of their independent education plan. Career Tech, we are required to transport to that school. Non-public and community schools, if the school is within 30 minutes of the district, we are required to transport those students. If you are eligible but considered impractical, so it's within 30 minutes, but there are only 2 or 3 students that ride, we can declare that impractical. We pay a $250 payment at the end of the school year. So this is some pieces that we have not really gone over in board meetings before. The in-district distance measurement. So within 2 miles or outside of 2 miles, how do we measure that? The route measurement begins at the intermediate school because that's the bus loop. That's where we drop most of our students. The route measurement ends at where your driveway meets the road. That just measures the 2 mile mark. And then we use a map, a Google map, and we also use a specific district vehicle to do that. But that doesn't mean that you're getting picked up and dropped off at your house. You can walk up to 1/2 mile for your bus stop. Exceptions to the board policy and Ohio Revised Code that I talked about earlier is that we actually do transport, or all K through 5 students are eligible. We don't do the 2 mile rule for them. In order to do that with the fleet that we have existing, we need to put 3 students per seat, which gets a little tricky as you get a little bit older. Grades 6 through 12, we do have the 2 mile, except for students who decide they would like to drive to school and get a parking pass. Once a student obtains a parking pass, they no longer have transportation with the district. And we do strictly adhere to all regulations as they relate to special needs students. I'll turn it over to Linda now. She's going to talk about how we build our routes and what goes into all of that planning.
So students, we only transport students from home to school and school to home. We do have to transport by law students that are divorced parents or a shared custody, as long as they both live in New Albany. We do not transport to dance lessons, birthday parties, play dates, grandma's house, babysitter, or from any daycares. Thank you. We have 77 passenger buses. We have 6 special need lift buses. We have 5 8-passenger vans, 2 cars, and all of the routes are transported with 30 to 60 minutes. We have 28 regular in-town buses, 3 special need lift buses for grades K-12, 1 out-of-district route for the Eastland Fairfield Career Center, 1 out-of-district for OSU and Columbus State, 1 out-of-district for Columbus Academy and St. Matthews. They are less than the 30 minutes away and we're required to transport. We have 1 special needs van that we transport, 2 special need cars that we transport, 5 route specialists for overcrowding and for drivers that are off or for the CDL requirements. We have 4 midday kindergarten, 2 preschool special needs at midday, and 1 special need van route. So the bus stops for the 18-19 school year.
Wait, just had a quick question.
Uh-huh.
Could you elaborate on a route specialist? Is that that's a,
It's a substitute driver
okay, thank you.
that's contracted. So for the 18-19 school year, the bus routes the stops are all the same. We've had to change a few stops and put them on different buses because of overcrowding on the bus from last year. So we know the areas that the largest riderships are in, so we try to use that to build the routes. If the area has a large number of students, obviously we can only put so many kids on the bus. Currently, we are routing, one of our buses for high school has 120 students assigned to that route on a 77 passenger bus, but we know the 120 are not going to ride. So it depends on the area that we know what is riding. There's several that have over 100 kids that are assigned. This is what caused all the shifting this year. There was several roads that we had to change. So the next exciting news that we have is our new GPS system from Synovia. And this will allow all the parents to have an app that they can sign into and have all the routing information on whatever device they would like. So you can, for their student only, you'll have to have a code in order to get into the app. It sends, there's a radius that it sends out, and you can set, the parent can set that radius, and then it'll tell you in 5 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever you want, where the bus is and when it will be at your house. That's coming in September once we get TransFinder and Synovia hooked up together, and that should be a nice addition to transportation.
Excuse me? Oh,
Yes.
sorry. Is this the same app that the pilot program was run on last year?
There were 2 different pilot programs that we ran. This was the second one that was in place.
Okay.
Questions?
How long is the typical bus route?
In town?
Yes.
Probably 25 to 30 minutes.
From the time it picks up its first kid to the time it arrives at school?
Yes.
We actually need to do that in order to be able to turn around the routes from high school to elementary, and then the reverse going home in the evenings. The 60 minutes that you saw on the slide is for the out-of-town route. But the goal is 30 minutes or less.
What's considered out of town?
Columbus Academy.
Okay, all right.
St. Matthews.
All right. So within the district boundaries,
Within the
about
district
25
boundaries.
minutes?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Pending traffic and accidents.
Yes, average. Got it.
That tracker should be a really nice enhancement for
Yes.
parents who are, you know, especially parents who are required to be there when that bus pulls up.
Mhm. Yeah, for the kindergarten parents, it's going to be very nice.
It's important to note, Sonia, we're talking about all of this, construction with Rose Run and Dublin Granville Road. And if you really listen to what Linda said, we have some buses that are 77 passenger buses that have over 100 students assigned to it because we know that they won't ride it. We can't force students to ride it, but I would also say that if you're assigned a bus, you should probably ride it at least next year, because that would also then reduce the number of cars that are in our loops. But we do plan, so it's not as though we say there are 77 seats, we're putting 77 kiddos and then only 10 ride. We know the routes that aren't going to have the ridership. That's why we can assign 129 or 100, what is that the most, I think?
Yeah.
Over 100, because we know that that many aren't going to be assigned. But we also have buses in some of the apartment areas or the preserve area that we know they will ride, so we only assign 72 or 77 students.
So if we're pushing for ridership and we get it, then what?
We have 5 route specialists that are available for overcrowding. So historically, what happens for the first week plus of school, Linda will have 5 or 6 routes. Normally it's 4 or 5 that end up being overcrowded, that we have to send a second bus to that pickup, and then we'll make adjustments. That's to Linda's point, where for the first couple weeks of school, bus routes always remain subject to change, but there are 4 or 5 routes historically every single year that change within the first 2 weeks of school, because we have to remove 2 streets off of this route to put 2 streets onto this route and create an additional route using one of the route specialists.
Okay.
So that's the magic in transportation that happens in specific areas, even using the data, because the 100+ that Becky just talked about as an example of assigning 122 kids to like bus route 22 is historically done because Linda tracks the percentage of ridership. We do bus counts throughout the school year. We know kind of what happens, but then fall, winter, and spring sports are different. So the ridership in the fall is not the same as ridership in the winter, which is not the same as ridership in the spring. And we have data for every neighborhood that represents that, because of the number of kids that participate in co-curricular, extracurricular activities impacts ridership. So Linda preps that and trying to assign the kids to the buses. So it's not a simple task by any means. I mean, it sounds really easy. We just take the kid and put them on a bus. There's actually a lot that goes into the route planning. It takes 6 weeks to assign over 5,000 kids, both in town and out of town, because we also have the out of town students at the parochial, private, or community schools, and then the Eastland Fairfield students that are community school kids for career tech that have to be assigned. So Linda spends 6+ weeks building routes in the summer. And then we see what happens when the first day of school happens, to your point, Debbie. We know that there will be a few routes that will be overcrowded that Linda will have to send a bus to. We kind of already know where we think they are, but we have to see how many kids show up at the bus stop.
I also want to reiterate that though we use the home address to determine whether you do or don't live within or outside the 2 mile, students can walk up to a half a mile to get to their bus stop.
We have cluster bus stops. We have them organized in neighborhoods. And to Linda's point, this year, because we've fine-tuned those over the last 2 years to try to geographically put them in precise locations, we've put them, they're identical to where they were when school ended. Bus stops were not moved. You might go to a new bus stop because your street has now been assigned to a different bus route, but the stop that it was originally assigned to your bus is still technically the same. We did not move bus stops. Linda moved streets because we had to balance loads. The bubble group happens. If you remember, our largest class in the school district was 5th grade last year. They're now on 6th grade. They're now on a different bus route. They ride with middle school, high school students. So that bubble group that went to 6th grade had an impact on secondary transportation. And Linda had to move streets to balance them.
So if we have overcrowding early on, you say you send a second bus, that's an actual second physical bus, or is that another bus that's
It's a
returned?
second physical bus that will probably create a different type of route within the first 2 weeks of school. And parents will get those individual notices that your bus route is now changed because of overcrowding. It's a fluid process, particularly for the first 2 to 4 weeks of school, because the ridership is different. And to be honest with you, and we've talked about this before, when it rains, the ridership is completely different. When it snows, the ridership is completely different. So we have to kind of watch the first 2 to 4 weeks, because if it would rain every single day, Linda can't judge that route based upon that because the ridership isn't accurate. But we will do bus counts for the first 2 weeks of school to start.
You mentioned this earlier, talking about the time, the turnaround time, because of the need to drop kids off and then go pick up the next round. Just to clarify, that's one of the reasons why we have the cluster stops, because if you were to just stop 2 or 3 times on every street, that is a huge increase in time, which would not allow us to be able to get kids to and from school as necessary, correct?
Or it's more buses, but
Well,
yes,
or
you're
that too.
correct. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
You remember accurately.
And those, yeah, and then those clusters are, how do you base those clusters? Is it on an intersection, a at a space where you know that there's just a ton of kids that are on this one street? What's the process there that we went through to determine
All
that?
of those.
Okay.
It just depends on the area. We try to put them in the neighborhoods, all the clusters. Any student that's in a rural area doesn't have a cluster stop, obviously. All neighborhoods, we just sort of divided them up, and where the largest amount of students are is where we tried to put the bus stop. Unfortunately, that changes every year. So, one year it could be here, and one year the kids could be at a different location, but the majority of the kids are not walking, but maybe 0.3 of a mile.
Thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to welcome Jessica Myers, Coordinator of Assessment and Accountability. She's going to walk you through the preliminary results for the 2017-18 local report card. The Ohio Department of Education will not officially release the report cards until September. However, we believe, based upon all the data that's been received by the school district, we have enough that we can start to share the preview with you to help inform the Board of Education in preparation for your conversations related to the continuous improvement goals that you will set for the 2018-19 school year, as well as the performance targets necessary for alternative compensation required by contractual agreements. So, Jessica Myers.
Good evening. I'm excited to share the preliminary results of the local report card. Just a reminder, these are still just preliminary results, as Superintendent Sawyer just said. We are pretty certain of the numbers that we are going to share with you, and that if anything changes, they might go up a little bit. Again, we want to look at our commitment to our excellence, our purpose, our response, and our focus in regards to setting our goals. The local report card is an accountability model that highlights academic attendance, graduation, growth, and college readiness. It is intended to help districts measure overall achievement and progress towards meeting and exceeding state standards. The academic measures rely heavily upon the Ohio State tests. The Ohio State tests are only administered to students in grades 3 through 8 and in select high school courses. Although significant legislation surrounds the requirements for achievement testing, it remains only one source of data that is used by our staff in identifying and analyzing the strengths and areas for improvement for each and every student in the district. Today's presentation will be based on preliminary results, and official report card data will be released in September. The local report card is made up of 5 major components: achievement, which looks at overall students' performance. At this time, the district has a B through their preliminary results. Gap closing, where we look at how subgroups of students do. At this time, I will share all of this in depth. We're sitting at an A. Progress is value added, which is not released yet, and so therefore it's up there as an NR, not rated. Graduation rate continues to be a strong measure for the district. We earned an A yet again. And prepared for success, looking at college and career readiness measures, we again earned a B. So we're going to look at achievement and the major part of achievement within the report card. There are 2 components that make up the achievement measure: indicators met and performance index. Indicators met looks at the district scores to a standard set by the state. So there are 24 indicators that the state sets for each district. Passage rates for certain tests, chronic absenteeism, retake, and gifted. We met 21 of 24 indicators. This is an increase of 6 additional indicators compared to last school year. Performance index is a measure of all student scores. It's based upon individual student results. Points are awarded for those levels, and this is where we have our PI score that is stated in benchmark 1. At this time, our PI is a 105.6 out of 120, a 2.9 point PI increase from 16-17. So I want to break down the indicators met and look at the 24 different indicators that the state sets out for every district. So we broke it down by grade level. Primary school achievement. Over the past year, the primary staff focused on implementing Bridges math program and supporting all readers. Across the state, Third grade math had the greatest decrease among all state tests administered in spring of 2018. So the average score for third grade math went down across the state by 2.1 percentage points. ELA, in ELA, there was a decrease of 2.1, and math, there was a decrease of 3. If you will notice for New Albany, our ELA increased even though the state average went down. And while our math slightly went down, this was the one area, the one test across the state where it had the biggest decrease. So our students maintained where the rest of the state average went down. The staff at the primary continues to support students that need additional help and stretching students' understanding. So both indicators at the primary were met for their grade level assessments. Intermediate achievement. Over the past year, there were several changes that occurred in the primary grades. Reconfiguration of the buildings provided opportunities to look at scheduling for students into blocks of times with teachers, teaming of teachers, and the implementation of bridges for math in grades K through 5. Teachers and staff used the opportunities to target instruction, and intermediate saw an increase in overall passage in all 7 areas. 4 of the 7 areas in the intermediate grades had a passing rate above 90%. So over 90% of the students in that particular grade passed with a proficient or above. In addition to increased passage rate, there was an increase in the percentage of students scoring in the top 2 bands. So when we talk about performance, there are 5 performance levels. And we saw an increase in the top 2 of advanced and accelerated. Did you have a question?
Just following along.
So great areas of improvement, great jumps for the intermediate building. Middle school, note that these are scores that include all accelerated students. So while it says middle school course achievement, it will include any of our accelerated students in intermediate when it comes to the math scores. So this past year, there was a clear focus of targeting instruction and providing additional support for students in grades 7 and 8. All areas increased in passage except for 1, which was grade 8 math, which stayed relatively the same. It went down by not even a percentage point. While 7th grade math did not meet the state indicator of 80%, there continues to be growth in this area. With the new math progressions this past year, Math 7 did not include any accelerated students, unlike previous years. So when you look at the 2 previous years that included accelerated students, so students that were grade level below, they were sitting for the 7th grade test. So therefore, when you look at that 74%, we are looking at students that are on grade level, and we still increase our passage within that grade band and area. In previous years, if you look at the 8th grade science, where we had a significant jump, in previous years, 7th graders were the main students that took the 8th grade science test. After matching the curriculum with the test blueprint, looking at the curriculum within the district, aligning with the state, we did an alignment. And so this past year was a readjustment, and roughly 120 accelerated 7th graders and move-in 8th graders were the only ones to take the 8th grade science test. For this coming school year, for 18-19, all 8th graders will take the 8th grade science test again. In this coming school year, the middle school will be providing additional support through intervention classes to help the needs of all students. So we're looking at stretching those students, but we're also putting in additional supports for students that need to increase that initial knowledge base. End of course achievement. So these are your high school tests, but again, it includes any student that takes Algebra 1 geometry. So we may have a 7th grader sitting in Algebra 1. We may have a 7th grader sitting in geometry. These passage rates includes all students that sat for one of these tests last spring. The 7 end of course exam, I already did that. All 7 end of course exams saw an increase in passage. Algebra 1 saw an 11.8% increase. Geometry, ELA 1, ELA 2, biology, US history all had an increase of approximately 8%. While geometry did not meet the indicator, there was still an 8.6% increase in passage. Across the state, there was an increase in passage for all EOCs, except for ELA 1. where there was a decrease in passage of 1.5. So if we look at the state average, it went down, but if you look at what we did for ELA 1, we went up significantly. It went up by 7.5%. And one thing that I want to note about ELA 1 is we went from 35% of our students scoring in accelerated and advanced, the top two, to over 53% of our students scoring in accelerated and advanced in ELA 1.
What was the state average increase in the other areas?
Increase?
Yeah,
There was an increase in all except for 3. I don't know, they were ranged. They varied from test to test. I don't have
ours
those.
was 8 to most of them, and 10.
Within the state, there you could see anywhere from a small percentage, 1 or 2, up to 6 or 7%, especially in high school biology.
Okay.
So those are all of the achievement indicators in regards to state tests. There are 3 other indicators. These 2 on this slide are new this year. First, chronic absenteeism. It's the percent of students that miss 10% or more of school in a given school year. There's a strong correlation between student attendance and success in the classroom. Therefore, the state has added this indicator to hold schools accountable for helping students attend school. The state indicator is a 13.1% chronic absenteeism rate. So what that means is 13.1% of your students, according to the state, can miss 10% or more of school in order to hit this indicator. For New Albany, we had a 5.1%. So 5.1% of our students missed 10% or more of school this past school year. During the 16-17 school year, we had a chronic absenteeism rate of 9.1. So we actually decreased our chronic absenteeism, or the number of students that missed 10% or more of school. During the 17-18 school year, the district partnered with the juvenile courts to provide a truancy officer to help provide supports for students that are struggling with school attendance. This joint effort between the truancy officer, administrators, and parents, our chronic absenteeism rate dropped to 5.1. This partnership with the juvenile courts will continue into the 2018-2019 school year. And so we are going to continue to look and work and keep that chronic absenteeism rate down and get it down even further. The second new indicator is of end of course retake improvement. As part of graduation requirements, those 7 end of course exams, students need to earn 18 points on the 7 exams. There are 7 exams, you can earn 5 points on each test, so for a total of 35. Students need to earn 18 points in order to graduate as a part of their graduation requirements. So what the state did was they pulled out students that retook an exam in order to increase their points to say, great, this is your initial time taking it. That's what all those previous achievement and of course passage rates were. Now, if a student retakes that exam, how are they doing? Are they increasing their performance when they take it a second time? So this is the first time the state has put this indicator on the report card and set a benchmark or a state indicator of 25%. That 25% of students had to increase their performance when they retook a state test. We had 43.9% of our students increase when they took a test a second or third time. Any questions on the new indicators? The last indicator is gifted, and this is the indicator that's made up of 3 parts. We have to hit all 3 parts in order to hit the gifted indicator. First is the value added, which won't be released until September. The second is the performance index, which was 120.169. So we can earn those additional points on the PI based upon students that take grade tests a grade level ahead. So a 4th grader taking a 6th grade math test earns what they call a bump. So instead of, if they earned an advanced, I have 1,031 students, I have 545 students that earned an advanced plus. Well, in terms of their family report that they got home, it says advanced. But in terms of the calculation, it's a bump because they're a fourth grader taking a test higher. So every time.
Sensitive.
So this is why we can get a PI above 120. The state sets the PI for gifted to be 117 in order to have met that part of the gifted indicator, and we have yet again exceeded that. We were at 120 last year, we maintained 120 this year. And the last part of that is the gifted inputs. Are we identifying students? Are we serving students? How are we showing for different subgroups? And there is a total of 90 points that can be earned. 80 points we need in order to meet, 90 points possible, and we are at an 86 for the district. So while this indicator at this point is marked as not met, we are on our way for meeting this based upon the value added that will be released in September. So all of that, those indicators, 24 indicators, make up only 25% of our achievement score. 75% comes from our performance index. So while the indicators focus on just the number of students that passed each test, the performance index is a measure that looks at how all students performed on the tests into one measure. So we get one score based upon how our students did. The state takes the percent of students that scored in a specific performance level and multiplies by the specific weight and then adds up the points. You can get a total of 120 if you don't have any gifted students. So with those gifted students testing above grade level, you could potentially get above 120. We are at 105.6. This is an increase of, where's my exact number? What is that,
2.9.
Thank you, 2.9. 2.9 from last year. In addition, if we look at the overall passage, so if I were to take all of our students and look at the overall passage from 16-17, 85.5% of our tests earned proficient or above. For 17-18, we had, let me back that up, 83.2 increased to 87.1, almost 4%, 3.9% more students passed overall than did the previous year. Along with an overall higher passage rate, there was also an increase in the number of students scoring at the advanced performance levels. Overall, there was an increase in the number of students passing, and we are supporting students at the higher level by stretching and pushing them into higher performance levels. So historically, the district has made a 7.8 point increase in PI since 2015-2016. This has been a concerted effort across the district. It is a two-prong approach to move the PI. First, there has been targeted intervention to decrease the number of students scoring basic and limited. Through the use of progress monitoring tools in the district, students that are at risk have identified and provided additional support. The use of intervention teachers, coaches, and support staff to provide additional instruction to fill knowledge gaps with these identified students have helped move more students to proficient and above. You can see this on the graph by looking at the downward trend in the first two performance levels. So gray is 15-16, yellow is 16-17, red is 17-18. So these are our two lowest levels. You can see that our overall percent has decreased over the last 2 years. Second, there has been purposeful academic support to stretch students beyond the proficient level. Gifted support services, differentiation within the classroom, and project-based learning that allows for individualized feedback to adjust instruction based on student needs. As you can see on the graph, there has been a shift in scores from proficient up to advanced. In particular, I want you to notice the advanced level. In the last 2 years, we've had over a 14% increase in the number of students scoring in advanced and advanced. New Albany staff continues to focus on supporting our students and stretching those academically and emotionally.
Just, can you go back there for just a second? Just to address it, the ranking, so we went from 64 to 38 to question mark. The ranking will not be available from the department until September. So that is the performance index goal that's part of the benchmarks, specifically for alternative compensation and performance comp in the school district. Our goal this year was number 32 or higher. We don't know what the official number will be until September. So although it looks as if we're well on our way, the official results will not come out until September.
When we look at benchmark 1, increasing achievement, the district administrators and staff had a clear vision to help all students both academically and developmentally, whether it be the implementation of math, Bridges math curriculum K through 5, the supported academic study centers, the reorganizing of instructional time through teaming, or the ongoing use of student data. The focus was always on how to put students' academic and emotional needs first. By always putting students first, the district was able to increase the number of indicators met from 15 last year to 21 this year, increase the overall passage of state tests from 83 to 87.1%, and increase our number of students scoring in advanced. Teachers and administrators continue to identify and support students where they are in the learning process. Some students may need a little extra support, while some students may need a little extra push. By putting students first, the district has increased our PI by 7.8% or 7.8 points over the last 2 years. While official rankings will be released in September, a PI of 105.6 is an indicator that New Albany staff strives to meet the needs of all of our students. Any questions on achievement?
Jess, can I ask you one clarifying question?
Yes.
Because I think it's important for the board to understand. So the 21 indicators out of the 24 that are currently represented do not include gifted. So because of the value added component not being released, so 3 of the 4 components related to it show met. If value added comes back for gifted showing met, the 21 will become 22
Correct.
out of 24, and it will become 91.6%. So that first piece that's a B, if we get the second, if they get the 22nd indicator, that will become an A. But that will be an increase from last year. But we don't know the value added component for gifted. So I'm just saying, although we keep saying 21 out of 24 indicators, it could very well be 22 if we get the value added component. We just do not know that at this stage, but it would change that B to an A. But the overall grade would stay as a B because it's 25%, 75%, if you remember the calculation that Jess explained. Makes sense?
I'm going to move to gap closing if there aren't any questions on achievement. So gap closing component shows how well we are meeting the performance expectations for our most vulnerable populations and students in English language arts, math, English learners, and graduation. There is a new calculation for gap closing for the 17-18 school year. Instead of relying solely on passage rates, the state has moved to looking at performance index scores for subgroups of students and comparing the PI of a subgroup to a state goal. Where we talked about indicators previously, it was just looking at straight passage rates. That's what the gap closing used to look at, was just straight passage rates. But the PI is a more sensitive measure to how students are doing overall. Not just passing, but are we moving those students from passing up to a higher performance level? So the state has moved from looking at straight passage rates for subgroups to looking at PIs, a performance index for each subgroup. The state used the last 2 years of data and created goals for each subgroup. For the next 10 years, the PI goal will increase for each subgroup. So the blue is the state, and so each year that blue bar will get a little bit taller. In addition to changing the PI, the number of students in the subgroups that need to be reported has dropped. So last year we had to have 30 students in a subgroup in order for it to be reported. The state, based upon ESSA regulations, has dropped that number to 25. So now, if we have 25 students in a subgroup, it will be reported. Okay. For us at the district level, we've hit that 30 for many years, but this drop from 30 to 25 becomes more subgroups will be reported at the building level. As a district, all subgroups in ELA met their respective PI goal for the 17-18 school year. While as a district, we met our subgroup goal, there are still specific subgroups that each building has identified to target supports and intervention services. So this is ELA. So gap closing is made up of 4 components: ELA, math, English learners, and graduation rate.
If I might ask, you mentioned they changed the calculation from last year. Do we have data on what happened statewide as the scores gone up and we're not measuring it strictly on a year-over-year passage rate? Or
Say that again.
under the new calculation, do we have information on statewide how scores have been? We achieved an A this year. I guess one question, could you recall what we achieved last year and
Based upon last year's, the
calculation?
way calculations it was, we had a gap closing of a B.
And we don't know statewide if the,
This measure is new this year, and so I'm hoping that when they release the state data and they release all the state information, and there's tons of information that comes out with the rankings, that more additional information for us to see how we compare across the state, in particular for the gap closing.
And our intent is to look at when the disaggregated data comes out statewide to actually look by subgroup type to understand are other school districts, for example, in multiracial outperforming where we're currently at. And then which are those school districts and what specifically are they doing as potential opportunities to understand how are you reaching the multiracial learner or the African-American learner or the students with disabilities, because the students with disabilities actually has a significant impact where Jess is going next in the high school data as an opportunity for us as a school district because of the N size. So although this is district level, there is an N size impact now at the building level because it's going to 25 to then go to 20. That N size is going to continue to decrease under ESSA and the new federal regulations to make sure you're moving the needle for every subgroup student, not just your overall picture as a school district. So there's actually pressure from an ESSA perspective under federal legislation to meet the needs of specific subgroup students to make sure you're meeting the needs of every learner within your school district, and that's what's now being publicly reported. The PI change is a significant change in gap closing. This is the first year, but it will have a long-term impact to demonstrate how school districts across the state of Ohio are better meeting the needs of individual subgroups of specific students in there, or exposing the fact that certain kids in your school district are not meeting and they're not increasing the learning that's taking place in the classroom, and it'll be exposed. That's the whole purpose behind the change in the federal legislation.
thank you, thank you.
So
Good question.
This is ELA. This next one is math. So again, the blue is the state goal, state PI goal. The red is our PI for those individual subgroups. So as a district, all subgroups in math met their respective goal. Building administrators have looked at specific subgroups within their buildings that may have met the goal, but still is lower than the PI for other subgroups. We'll look at this more specifically with the high school, but we want to start looking at these. We want this gap to get bigger and bigger. We want our PI to be much larger than the minimum. Because when you look at these are state averages over the last 2 years. And so you'll see that some of these are lower than others. So we want to try and increase, and that has been specific conversations with buildings and setting, and to help look at different goals and how we can make that a bigger spread between us and the state goal. The third part of gap closing is graduation rate. Graduation rate continues to be a strong measure for New Albany. All subgroups met their graduation rate goal. And just for reference, so you understand the number of students, this was based on 2017 grads and the number of students within those subgroups for that particular graduation year. The last part of gap closing is a brand new measure this year. New to gap closing is the English learners measure. Students identified as English learners annually take OELPA, the Ohio English Language Proficiency Assessment. So once students earn a certain score, they have to earn 4s on all of them. They will exit English learner ELL services. The goal of the EL is to either get to proficient and exit, or to continue to grow and earn more points on your OWELPA. So OWELPA was first administered in 2016-17, and you can see we exited many students. So we had 86 students that took OWELPA in 16-17. 33 met the score for proficient and exited services. Another 29 hit what they considered a growth goal. This past school year, we only had 52 students that met the requirements for this particular measure. Of that, 18 met proficient and exited EL services, 14 met their growth goal. So while they didn't hit proficient, they are still moving towards that proficient level. That meant 61.5% of our students either met their growth goal or exited services. The state set a goal of 51% students in order to meet this particular gap closing measure. And since we were at 61.5, this goal was met. So when you look at all 4 areas of gap closing, our overall grade was an A. Questions on gap closing?
I would just add that this English language learner component, because it is new with the OWELPA, this is actually a subgroup within our school district that is growing in demand of need. So there's more high-level services that are being required based upon the English language proficiency that's being demonstrated upon entry to the school district. So this population is actually changing in our school district daily. We're seeing much more severe need for English language learner services this past year than we saw the previous year, just based upon the students that are being enrolled. So this is an interesting subgroup for us that's requiring more specified intervention and support to help them be successful in the classroom. And we're meeting that demand, but it's becoming harder. Interestingly enough, in the conversations with the teachers and the interventions and supports that are being put in place, particularly at the elementary and middle school level.
Any other questions about gap closing? Graduation rate, as stated, graduation is a calculation that it looks at a cohort of 4 and 5 years. So did students graduate within 4 years and within 5 years? This is a strong measure for us, and we yet again earned an A on graduation rate. K-3 literacy is not a measure that is rated. We have less than 5% of our kindergarten students that are considered struggling readers, and therefore we are not rated on this particular measure on the report card. And the last measure is our Prepared for Success. This measure looks at ACT scores, participation, SAT, IB scores, AP scores, looking at students, whether or not they're college and or career ready. This particular information is always a year behind, so this is looking at the graduating class of 2017. ACT participation, ACT remediation-free scores, honors diplomas, AP participation, AP exam scores of 3 or higher, all increased over the 2016 cohort. The overall component percentage increased from an 84.1 to an 86.9. So while we still maintained a B from last year to this year, our number of students, the requirements to meet, we are still increasing on that. So when we look at the report card, some big things to highlight. 19 of 21 testing areas increased their passage rates. So of the 21 assessments that we gave, 19 of them increased their overall passage. We had an increased PI, or performance index, in all buildings. We met our PI, our performance index goal, for all of our subgroups, and 100% of our third graders were promoted. We're going to continue to focus on continuing aligning our daily instruction with our standards, continue our formative summative assessments, targeting interventions, provide opportunities to extend thinking, and continue to use our progress monitoring tools through our data warehouse. So I'm going to take a quick, just kind of go through each building, just give you a high-level overview of the building level report cards. The primary school, this is only based on third grade data. So we only have third graders that take the state test. For this 2017-2018, the PI was a 106. They met their indicators and therefore received an A for achievement. For gifted, they only have two of the parts for gifted. They have the PI, which was a 119, and they met their gifted inputs, so they met their gifted indicator. In terms of gap closing, all their subgroups met their PI. K through 3 literacy, again, we look at, while we don't measure it at the district level, we do measure it at the building level. It looks at progress of students and how we code them. I'll let Mr. Emery talk about that. And the third grade reading guarantee, I'm proud to say the second year in a row, 100% of our students were promoted through the third grade reading guarantee. New Albany Intermediate, reconfiguration was a catalyst for looking at how building structured time and teachers and teaming of teachers. This allowed additional time for math and ELA for supports for students in grades 4 through 6. They had a PI of 107.6. If I look at I redid the PI calculation from 16-17, just looking at 4th and 6th graders, we had an increase in PI for grades 4 through 6 by 5 points. It was a great, by looking at that reconfiguration, looking at structural time, the instructional time, we were really able to make some good progress in the intermediate building. A couple different highlights too is they decreased. So if we look at the percent of students in basic and limited, we had 15.55%, and they decreased that from 16-17 to 17-18 to 10.8%. So they're supporting those students up to proficient. And also, not only did they decrease, but they increased their accelerated and advanced from 37 to a 46%. So we're supporting students and stretching students at the same time. They have met their gifted PI, they have met their gifted inputs, but we are waiting on value added. And the intermediate met all of their subgroup goals through gap closing. So when we look on areas of focus, we have for preschool through 6th grade, ongoing Bridges support, implementation of college preparatory math for any student taking a grade 6 math or above, implementation of Lucy Cochran's writings, analyzing last year's results over areas of improvement. We've already identified areas in writing, action plan specific to the grade, continuing to look at our viable curriculum, and again, using the Performance Matters data warehouse. In particular, at the intermediate, we spent a lot of time last year identifying students through the progress monitoring tools. And it helped significantly in terms of helping provide and targeting those additional supports. Middle school and high school. At the middle school, from 16-17 to 17-18, again, if I look at just 7th and 8th graders, they went from a PI of 100.7 last year to a PI of 106.4, a 5.7 point increase in PI at the middle school if you look at grades, similar grade levels. They met 9 out of their 10 indicators, and they currently have a B for achievement. For gifted, they met their gifted PI at a 121. They've met their gifted inputs, and we are still waiting on value added. And the middle school also met all of their subgroup goals. The high school PI increased from 98.7 to 100.4. This occurred by decreasing the number of basics from 14.2% to 11.3 and increasing the number of advanced from 24.9 to 30.9. If we look at gifted, they had a PI of a 115.426. The state hits that PI benchmark of 117, and so the high school did not meet the gifted PI, but they did meet their gifted inputs and service. So when we identify students, are we servicing them and providing them the supports that they need in the building? And value added has not been released. The high school's gap closing. All subgroups met their PI. Unfortunately, there was an automatic demotion due to a subgroup PI minimum. So the state of Ohio says that every subgroup, while you hit your goal, every subgroup has to have a PI of 60. If you don't have a PI of 60 for a single subgroup, it will automatically demote you 1 grade. So we had one subgroup that had a PI of 59.7, and therefore we had an automatic demotion. So while we met the subgroup goal, We didn't hit 60, and therefore the gap closing at the high school is a B. Graduation rate is an A, prepared for success is a B. Areas of focus for grade 7 through 12 for this coming in school year: implementation of college preparatory math, for Algebra 1, geometry and statistics, targeted math intervention during additional time added to student schedules at both the middle school and at the high school, utilization of the EAGLE period to provide additional support for individual students, action plans, again, looking at that curriculum, using those common formative assessments, and using our data warehouse. So when I look at the results from the preliminary results, we can really look at benchmark 1 and benchmark 3 from our CIP. While the PRA rankings for the state have not been released, New Albany did increase achievement. Over the last 2 years, we've increased our PI by 7.8 points. We've increased achievement by meeting the needs of individual students, both those that we need to push up and those that we may need to stretch a little bit. Through benchmark 3, we look at our achievement gap and closing those standards. With the new calculations, while we met our PI goals and we met every subgroup goal, we are going to continue to look at those subgroups to help support each student meet their academic needs. Questions and comments?
Has this information been released to staff?
Only by building, not by district. So that's happening tomorrow at convocation.
There's a lot of really good numbers there. So thanks for walking us through all of that. That was good. It's a lot. Yeah.
It's a lot.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
The word is just beginning.
The results are really exciting, though.
Yeah, they really are.
I'm so excited for everybody involved, and I think you guys just have so much momentum right now, and I can't wait to see the final results. But I just want to congratulate you on, and everyone on these results. And I know that there's been so much hard work, and it just, to me, demonstrates that you're focused on the right things, that the culture has, been moving with you, and you've got the team all rowing together. And I think you have the right people in place to drive these results. So I'm just so excited for everyone, and hope you all are really proud of these results.
And Jess, for you in particular, we know the work goes on in the classroom, and ultimately it's what happens between the classroom teachers and their students. We have been pushing now for several years, setting the bar higher and higher and higher. And we know that the teachers want to achieve better results, but the reality is that they can't do it by themselves. Giving them the tools to know where to put extra effort, to know where the opportunities are, where the challenges are. Those tools are invaluable to enabling the teaching professionals to be able to get the results that they want also. So I don't want it to go unsaid that oftentimes the person driving the data is the person that everybody either ignores or loves to hate, so it really should not go unsaid that the work you do is truly invaluable to allowing classroom teachers to be their best every day. So thank you for that.
I'd just like to say, this is why I got involved. I'm really thrilled to see the progress, and these are all really good results that I can see. I temper it with dating myself with a Kenny Rogers song of, there'll be time enough for, what is it? Now I'm going to get lost in my analogy. Time enough for counting when the deal is done. So I'm a little anxious to see how the rest of the statewide results come out. But again, I don't want it to go unsaid while we're having these preliminary discussions. Just as Debbie alluded to, it's been a effort across the community, internally as well as externally, and do appreciate you I work with a bunch of accountants, so I appreciate you counting it up for us, and I'm trying to keep up with the notes, but it's really good to see the progress, and thank you to our curriculum directors, Scott Emery and Shirley Hamilton, who I know are here, and they've been working on these results along with the rest of the district, so thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
We'll celebrate officially in September.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
No,
But we're well on our way.
no chicken counting until they're hatched.
Well, we are going to do a little celebration tomorrow, so I will just forewarn you that regardless of the ranking, there's still improvement across the board.
Agreed.
And they need to celebrate their improvement across the board because
Yes.
to Debbie's point and Paul's, and everyone's, there's a lot of effort that went into all of this. Based upon the results, I've asked Dr. Hamilton and Mr. Emery to come forward just to provide you with a brief update on the focus for secondary and elementary curriculum for 2018-19. I think it'll be logical when you see the areas of focus as to why it aligns to the data you just saw. Dr. Hamilton's going to go first and Mr. Emery will follow. Dr. Hamilton?
Thank you. Thank you very much and good evening. And Jess, thank you for setting this all up because you'll hear some of the same things again, so you'll see that we are aligned and that it all makes sense. So I appreciate, appreciate you doing that, Jess. So the first thing that you'll see is nothing new. I've shown this before. This is our 5-year K through 12 curriculum cycle. And as you can see, last year we did middle school math and world language at the high school, middle and high school level. We did writing and some technology at the elementary level. Then this year, we're going to do K through 12 English language arts, K through 12 music, and then high school drama, since there's no middle school or elementary drama. So those are the areas we're going to focus on for our curriculum planning cycle, our curriculum review this year. And this involves a lot of time and effort by our teachers. And we look at standards, we look at OST test blueprints, we look at item analyses. It's quite a process. And it results in this curriculum framework, which again, I've shared before. And we did this with math and world languages this year. So, we have a basic framework with the standards and the evidence of learning, the topics, the timing, framing, pacing, standards and evidence of learning, the instructional strategies and resources, common formative assessments, summative assessments, academic content, vocabulary, and differentiation strategies. So those are all the things that we look at and we fill in this information for each course that we look at. So that's the curriculum framework. Then these are some of the common curriculum initiatives with the middle and high school. Both schools are going to be involved, both levels are going to be involved in this. So we're going to continue our vertical alignment team meetings. Last year was the first year for that, and we did them every other week until March when testing was so crazy, so we didn't have them then all the time. I did an evaluation of the vertical alignment teams at the end of the year, and people were very favorable. All the staff members were very, very favorable to this, but they said they wanted more time. And see, what we did this year was we did 20 minutes before school a couple times a month. This year, we're going to build it into some of our delayed start times and then also our PD days. So we're going to take like 45 minutes of some of those times and structure it a little more. And so those will continue, but in a little bit different format. Then this summer we conducted CPM training and for our implementation. For this year, very intense 4-day training with all of our math teachers for CPM, college prep math. And then there will be ongoing PD throughout the school year. So we have one scheduled for September and then one in November and then December and March, I believe. So there will be 4 more sessions that will continue. Then, as I mentioned, this year we'll be doing the English language arts, music, and drama curriculum review. And we also are going to continue with our Easton E3 Learning Lab, PAST Foundation, IGS, Energy, problem-based lesson implementation. It's a mouthful, but we are going to continue with that. We have cohort 1 finishing up here in the fall. They're going to be doing the 3rd course in the program. And so that's cohort 1. And then the cohort 2, which, by the way, we have like 28 people who have volunteered to be a part of that. It's primarily primary and intermediate school teachers. So they're really excited about this. So they will begin their journey through the 3 courses in September. And this is all based on using the energy. Using the energy environment and what was the third? What's the third thing? Energy, environment, and whatever the third thing is, of the E3 learning lab. So, and then we have I'm sorry?
Engineering.
Yes, engineering. Thank you. Thank you. Energy, environment, and engineering. I always forget that one. Thank you. And then, of course, we have a new Easton E3 lab coordinator, Sandy Reed, has come on board. She's already started this year and has been meeting with teachers and will be involved in this. So that's going to be going on as well. And we expect great things on this. And then, of course, our well-being program initiatives, substance use, digital citizenship, social emotional learning development, that will all take place as part of our well-being program initiatives. And then the ongoing R-Factor implementation with staff, students, and parents. These are things that the middle and high school are both participating in. And so then we have our, as far as our middle school curriculum initiatives, we have these kind of deal with student support. I tried to categorize them and lump them together. So we'll be doing progress monitoring, again, using MAP, and we'll be analyzing the growth data. We're going to do targeted intervention for middle school students in math and English language arts. There are classes, actual intervention classes that will be happening this year based on scores in math and English language arts to help struggling students. So targeted intervention. There is also going to be common planning time. I think Jess mentioned some of these things for middle school math, ELA, science, and social studies teachers. Then we're also continuing to develop and use common formative assessments in all core subject areas. Then the next slide deals with our electives, which again I've talked about in the past. Our electives will be semester long at the middle school, multi-grade level, except for band, choir, orchestra, and world language. Elective options will include art, 1 through 4 class sessions, wellness, 1 through 4 different sessions, PE for high school credit, life skills, 2 sessions or 2 different levels of that, technology, 2 different levels, and then world language exploratory. So we've talked about this at another meeting. Then we're also we have life skills summer curriculum work with junior achievement to continue that partnership. As far as our curriculum initiatives at the middle school, the ELA, English language arts teachers, 8+. This is an ELA, kind of an accelerated program, if you will. Teachers did some summer work to increase the rigor in writing in their program. The middle school focus for next year is writing across the curriculum with an emphasis on argumentative writing. We determined that that's an area we need to focus on. World language, course of study and differentiation, summer curriculum work, summer reading requirement for students. And of course, we had our CPM, which I already talked about for math. So that's the middle school. Then as far as the high school initiatives are concerned, we will have our high school intervention learning centers again, and Eagle period support for struggling math and ELA students. Again, I believe Jess mentioned that. Progress monitoring using MAP in the high school to analyze growth data for math. Math and writing labs, we're going to make sure that the writing labs are up and running. Again, we've had math labs in the past, but we're going to make sure that those are up and running. Math and writing labs, interventions, enrichment, and support. We're also going to do data analysis through Performance Matters to inform instruction. The high school is really involved in that. And then professional development for the high school will be differentiation, data analysis, R-Factor, understanding cultural impact. And then as far as the English language arts, writing instruction alignment and assessments, ongoing work with a consultant, Brandy Lust, the curriculum audit, of course, for the English language arts this year, and then implementation of Turnitin software. That's something we're going to do in all the English language arts classes. Social studies, writing across the curriculum, and is the focus science, common formative assessments, leadership and personal skill development with Tom Cody from, Top 20 Teachers, and Jack Slavinsky with OSU. And then humanities teachers did a lot of summer curriculum work to align their courses in humanities. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. So any questions about middle and high school curriculum initiatives?
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
So then now Mr. Emery will provide the elementary update.
All right, thank you for allowing me an opportunity to provide information about our elementary initiatives for this year. Our focus areas for this school year are in the areas of math, writing, technology integration, R factor, and data analysis. For math, we've been pleased with the progress we've made the past 2 years as reflected in Ohio's rigorous exams, which just shared with you earlier. Since 2016, third grade math passage rates have increased 5%, fourth grade 12%, fifth grade 13%, and sixth grade 14%. We've also had across-the-board increases in students scoring in the advanced category, the highest level available on the state exams. These increases have been possible due to the board's support for purchasing a consistent and aligned math curriculum for our K-5 teachers, the board's support for creating new math courses at the intermediate school, Pre-Algebra A and Pre-Algebra B, and Superintendent Sawyer's focus on instruction with a deep conceptual understanding of math concepts, as opposed to seeing how quickly the district can accelerate students through math concepts. Superintendent Sawyer's vision has been supported by the board through your willingness to allow us to have math teacher leaders, which we refer to as our instructional coaches, to provide job-embedded professional development for our teachers. So thank you for your support. For this school year, we plan to continue to refine our implementation of the Bridges in Math program for grades K to 5. Primary principal Teresa Smith attended the National Bridges Conference in July with our math instructional coaches, and she brought back many excellent ideas from leading experts in this program, which we will implement this year. Early Learning Center Principal Michelle Unger is piloting the brand new preschool version of Bridges, which will help bring consistency between our new pre-K program and our kindergarten classrooms in the area of math. And we're excited to see the results for all of our K-5 students next year in our second year of using Bridges. For our intermediate math courses that teach sixth grade content or higher, which includes Math 6, Pre-Al A, Pre-Al B, and Algebra 1, we'll be joining our secondary math colleagues in implementing CPM, or College Prep Math, the initiative that Dr. Hamilton led us through in selecting last year. This will help our intermediate students have a consistent and coherent experience as they progress to New Albany Middle School. As with math, we've also been pleased with our students' progress on state exams in the areas of English language arts. Since 2016, we've seen increases in passage rates of 10% in third grade, 16% in fourth grade, 12% in fifth grade, and 6% in sixth grade. In addition, the percentage of New Albany's elementary students scoring in the advanced category are at the highest levels since the implementations of these state exams. In regard to Ohio's third grade reading guarantee, as just shared, we've had 2 straight years of a 100% rating from the state of Ohio. And that's not easily attained because the cut score goes up each year. So our 100% this past year was at a higher level than the year prior. While there's much to celebrate in ELA, after Jessica Myers and our elementary principals explored our data, we believe our students can achieve at an even higher level on the essay portion of the state ELA exams. Upon closer inspection by our principals, we realized we lack a guaranteed and viable curriculum in writing at the elementary grades, and that is something that Superintendent Sawyer's demands in all content areas. So for this school year, we will use the units of study in writing in all primary and intermediate classrooms. This program, developed by Columbia University faculty, is used in districts across the country that are seeking consistent instruction and high expectations in student writing. Similar to the Bridges in Math implementation last year, we plan to provide professional development to our teachers in writing through the use of instructional coaches, one for the primary grades and one for the intermediate school. Principals Katie Nowak and Teresa Smith, along with our teacher leaders, attended an intense one-week training this summer with Columbia University professor Dr. Lucy Calkins, who authored this curriculum. All of us in the elementary leadership team are excited to see the impact of units of study and writing on our students' test performance next year. In addition to math and writing, our third initiative at the elementary level involves the integration of technology into our instruction. Much of the attention this upcoming year is going to focus on the intermediate school's implementation of the one-to-one iPad initiative. Director of Technology Mike Voss has made significant investments at the ELC and the primary schools as well. I won't speak too much about this initiative this evening since Mike has already shared an implementation plan, but I'll highlight just 2 software packages that we will be using that have been made possible by the board's support for increase of access and technology. In cooperation with Special Education Director Sheila Saunders and our Assistant Elementary Director of Special Education, Brian White, we will provide access to Lexia Learning to all primary and intermediate students. Past use of Lexia Learning software at the elementary level has been limited to at-risk students who have had significant gains in reading skills by using this software. The research from the company shows benefits for all students that use Lexia Learning. For math, we plan to use Redbird Math for 1st and 2nd grade. This program was developed at Stanford University. Redbird is an alternative to the ALEX software that many of you are familiar with, but Redbird is age appropriate for primary students. Other initiatives include continuing the great work started last year by Superintendent Sawyers with the R Factor. Our elementary team is looking forward to working with John Hood on this important program for our staff and students. We also plan to continue our work under the leadership of Jessamine Myers with the use of Performance Matters, our data warehouse. And Sandy Reed's work at the Easton E3 Learning Lab will be another exciting development this year at the elementary grades. And finally, specific to the ELC, Michelle Unger and Jackie Zieber will continue the process to secure a 5-star rating for our preschool program. So thank you for allowing me time to update you on our elementary curriculum initiatives, and I welcome any questions you may have about these initiatives and how they align with our statement of purpose and continuous improvement plan.
Thanks for the presentation. Is the units of study and writing, is that going to be all grades, or which grades will it impact for this year?
Full implementations in grades 1 through 6 with a pilot in kindergarten using full day and half day, so we can see how much can we really dig into units of study in kindergarten based on the differing length of the program.
Thank you. And then
in all classrooms, grades 1 through 6.
Great. And then you mentioned ALEX. Refresh my memory. So we're going to do Redbird for 1st and 2nd grade. Were 1st and 2nd graders doing ALEX before? Or
no, ALEX content doesn't start until 3rd grade. So the weakness with ALEX is that for our at-risk 3rd graders, they couldn't even really utilize ALEX right out of the gate. So the same company, McGraw-Hill, that sells ALEX has purchased Redbird from Stanford University. So we looked at Redbird last year. We didn't do an implementation, but they were willing, especially with the one-to-one initiative that Mike is leading us through. Since we purchased ALEX for 3rd grade at the primary school, they expanded that site license for free for Redbird for all 1st and 2nd graders. So gifted advocates across the country, really, particularly homeschooled gifted advocates, really clamor for Redbird access for their own students. It's a very expensive program. So we feel we're very fortunate we can offer it to all of our students in New Albany in 1st and 2nd grade.
Great. Thank you.
ALEX goes 3rd through what?
College.
All the way through.
Yeah, all the way to college.
Well, for New Albany specifically, I know we use it grades 3 through 6, and Jess can speak more specifically about where we top out.
Up through 8.
Yeah.
And is there any reason we don't do it 9 through 12? Just
it's being used in the connections courses at the high school, correct, Shirley, for the at-risk kids?
Not at this. We're looking at it. Right now, it's really not aligned to what we're trying to do.
Okay.
But we're looking at something.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you both. Next on the agenda, and I think this would be fairly quick, I received a request from the City of New Albany related to a resolution by the Board of Education to support the installation of a roundabout at Walnut and 605. So the City of New Albany is going after grant dollars, so they're asking for us to support through board resolution a recommendation to try to get the grant funding that's available from MORC specifically to support a roundabout in the future. So it's not something that's imminent. The city's out trying to get specific resources to support the development. It will benefit the school district from a traffic pattern, particularly for buses. There is a new 55+ development that's going in off of Walnut that will change the traffic pattern in the long term. So it is my recommendation to the Board of Education that we support the efforts of the city to try to obtain the grant dollars. Are there any questions related to the resolution? The next section is board policy. So presented to you this evening are updates or revisions to proposed board policies with the exception of two. There are two new policies that are coming forth through legislative action and or attorney recommendations through Neola, specifically for sick leave and or safe operations of a motorized utility vehicle by students. Based upon, I would believe to be insurance claims in relationship to the safe operation of a motorized utility vehicle. So if you have them on your school campus, you now have to have rules. We do not have students who operate motorized vehicles on the school campus, unlike some other rural school districts throughout the state. The other specific policies are all revisions to update them to be aligned to Ohio Revised Code or specific changes either through federal or state legislation, which would include Ohio Revised Code, but they're not significant updates. They're just really to align to the changes of what's happened specifically in statute. Happy to answer any questions related to the policies. Thank you, President McClellan.
I actually have one quick question.
Okay, which one?
So I actually was just thinking about this because it happened to me today downtown. So the new thing is these motorized scooters that people can rent and drive around. And just thinking about, I know we have policies as it relates to students driving their vehicles on campus.
Right.
Would that also apply then to if a kid was riding a motorized scooter?
Yes.
Okay.
So our answer is, and the policy that's proposed tonight is that you're actually prohibiting the use of motorized vehicles
Okay.
by students on school grounds.
So that includes that?
That includes that.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay.
It's
That's
a safety issue.
absolutely.
We have skateboards. We don't need anything more than that. That's enough.
Well, especially when they're weaving through traffic.
Skateboards are enough.
All right, we're at an opportunity now for public participation, and we have two individuals who've submitted to address the board. First one, is it Liz Bolton? Bowman, sorry. If you could just come to the podium, give us your name, address, and then let us know what you're here to talk about.
Yep. My name's Liz Bowman. I am at 4428 Haybury Drive. We have a kindergartner this year starting. We're really excited, and we just had some questions about the transportation policy. Thank you, Linda, for answering all my questions via email to the best of your ability, and for clarifying some things tonight, Becky, with regards to the state minimum requirements. Specifically, we weren't around 4 years ago when the district put a policy in place that they no longer allow accommodations or bus route or stop changes. Busing is only, as I understand it, only offered to your home, or in this case, I guess in our neighborhood would be our clustered bus stop. So this is a little bit of a challenge for us because both my husband and I work. We have a kindergarten that's doing half a day, and we do need to have, per the policies, an adult at the stop to get our child off of the bus. So we have chosen, we have an in-home daycare provider who's here also, rather than sending our kids to a standalone private daycare. That's our choice, to have our child in a home setting. So the question was whether or not we could actually put in a request to have our child be picked up and dropped off at the stop that is assigned to our daycare providers or child care providers' home. And Linda said, no, we could not do that because there's a policy in place that doesn't allow for that. So that's why I'm here. There's been a lot of talk about transportation and all the changes that are coming up with the construction. And also, I appreciate the complexities of putting together a bus schedule. I work with people, I work in a hospital, so I know nothing as you can have well-laid plans and they may not go accordingly, so I get that. It sounds like a lot of changes are made in those first few weeks, and so I'm just wondering if the district may be at a point with at least the children that are at younger ages, kindergarten, first graders, who have to have an adult at the bus stop, where you would make any accommodations, and that possibly could help with the efficiency of busing and maybe knowing some of those changes up front, and also encourage people to use busing more than actually driving their kids to school. So that's where I'm at. I just wanted a little clarification. I don't know the backstory. I know that previously there was, from what I've been told, was a lot of day-to-day changes in busing that added to a lot of inefficiency and extra stops, and I can definitely appreciate that. But we're not asking to add a stop. We're just asking to use a different stop within our neighborhood. Did I clearly kind of state my concern? I don't think I'm alone in that. There's others neighbors I've talked to that this is, they've chosen to either just drive their kids to school or had to kind of switch things up and use maybe a private daycare center versus a family friend or a babysitter within the neighborhood. So I don't think I'm alone in that. But I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Then Stephanie Myers.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing us to talk tonight at the board meeting. My name is Stephanie Myers, and I've been living in New Albany for 8 years. For the past 9 years, I've run a successful in-home childcare center. I have 2 daughters of my own that attend New Albany. One will be in 6th grade this year, and I have an incoming kindergartner. I'm coming to you this evening in hopes of opening a dialogue around the subject of bus accommodations. Several years ago, many families were greatly affected when New Albany changed their bus policy to allow no bus accommodations. Not only were many families affected by this change, but several in-home childcare providers in the community, like myself, were gravely affected financially by this decision. Parents who had depended on in-home providers to love and care for their children since infancy were blindsided with the notion that they would have to uproot their children and find new, more expensive childcare in order to figure out how to get their child to and from school. I completely understand that it is a burden and a safety concern when dealing with daily requests to a child's bus assignment. I agree that there should be boundaries in place to cover the wants and desires for a child to go to a friend's home or go to grandma's house after school. However, I do feel that there should be consideration given and perhaps a separate policy to handle situations involving home child care providers, especially when those children reside in the same neighborhood as a child care provider. It is not fair to working parents of our community to leave them with only a few options for before and after school care. Eagle's Nest is always full with a waiting list and is always searching for teachers. So this is not a viable option for most families. Not every family can afford the overpriced daycare centers, and some families prefer the in-home setting for raising their children. Some children flourish better in these smaller settings, and as educators, it is our job to care for the children even beyond the classroom. I have tried to speak with the manager at the bus garage many times regarding my childcare center. Each year I've asked for an accommodation, I was denied before I could even finish my sentence, with a harsh statement explaining that New Albany does not accommodate anymore because it seems to be too much work for the employees at the bus garage. This past year was a nightmare for my daycare children and the bus situation. The first week of school, a student of mine was left on the bus. The driver did not even know she was there or that she had to stop. I noticed that the bus went completely out of her way to take this one child to a neighborhood off Conifer, and then took a bus full of kids to my neighborhood. And I called, as well as the mother of this child called, and asked for a change, not only in concern for the safety of their child, but also to make the bus route easier for the driver. We were immediately shut down, and they refused to even consider our request. The rest of the school year was filled with stress and anxiety for me for several reasons. I also pick up several preschool children and would come straight to the bus stop after that pickup. For 8 years, this has worked efficiently. I have had plenty of time to sit and wait for the bus. But with recent construction all over this area, it has become increasingly difficult for me to arrive early to the bus stop. I am usually on time, but this past year, the bus driver came early several days and did not wait for the scheduled time of the drop-off. So there were multiple occasions where the student was left on the bus longer than they should have been. For whatever reason, the morning bus pickup is right in front of my house, but the midday return of kindergarten students, the stop is 3 streets down. I also asked the bus garage to please consider keeping the bus stop the same for the kindergartner child. If I were to be late, I have an employee at my house that could step right outside to get that child, but could not leave children unattended to go 3 blocks down.
You have 1 minute remaining.
Okay. Recently, I went to see Linda at the bus garage, and for the first time, we were able to have a polite conversation where I voiced my concerns, not only for my own children and daycare families, but for the families across our community that endure the same stress and anxiety. I was thrown off guard, however, when there was a statement made that childcare is not the district's problem. As an educator myself, I was taken aback by that comment because as educators, the whole child should be considered and what is best for the education of the child. This includes transportation arrangements. I am respectfully requesting that the district reconsider its policy of bus assignment changes, only when it affects childcare arrangements when the childcare provider lives in the same neighborhood as the parent. For this coming year at this time, this only affects 1 child for whom I provide childcare, and this child lives, I can walk to her house very close, and I'm only asking for compassion and understanding to have an open mind regarding childcare accommodations in the future for the entire district. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. We now are on to superintendent's items. Could I have a motion on superintendent items A through C?
So moved.
Second, Malinowski, Mr. Darrow, Sawyers.
Thank you, President McClellan. Letter A for personnel, you have updated action items this evening for the start of the 2018-19 school year that include resignations that have been received only for classified personnel, as well as contractual obligations that are required pursuant to the negotiated agreements and or Ohio Revised Code for the exempt non-teaching employees across the school district. So standard employee-based action items that you typically see at the start of the school year. There's really nothing that's not standard or contractually required pursuant to the negotiated agreements with OPSI or plea. Letter B, this evening's general business. You have recommendations for approval of senior waivers for 3 students that qualify pursuant to Board of Education policy. The recommendation to pledge support to the City of New Albany in their grant effort, specifically to try to get money towards the roundabout. And letter C this evening are the final, we believe at this point in time, requests for payment in lieu of for students that were eligible at the end of the 2017-18 school year. It is parents' responsibility on Ohio Revised Code that they have to submit the request at the end of the school year that has been completed. So the requests have been received and these parents are eligible because they were deemed impractical to transport for the $250 payment that's required by Ohio Revised Code. Any questions I can answer?
With no questions, may I have a roll call, please?
Ms. Kalinowski?
Yes.
Vice President Darrow?
Yes.
Mr. Newmaw?
Yes.
President McClellan?
Yes.
During the executive session, no action items.
Okay. So that brings us to the addendum item, which is executive session. So I'd ask for a motion to adjourn to executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Darrow, Ms. Kalinowski. Could I have a roll call, please?
Vice President Darrow?
Yes.
Ms. Kalinowski?
Yes.
Mr. Newmaw?
Yes.
President McClellan?
Yes. We don't expect any additional action this evening, so thank you all for joining us.